Hello.
It's Friday.
It's Friday, and why should it be a normal Friday?
Why? It's a wonderful chaos.
So it's not going to be a normal Friday. We phoned our guest on 5 different occasions. We haven't got them.
No.
So what does that tell us, Bambos?
It tells us that we're going to carry the show and give it a new twist.
We're going to twist it.
And we're going to discuss criticism and how to deal with it, the do's and don'ts.
The craziness of people thinking they're helping you when they're actually criticizing you.
And we're going to do all this, Andy, and so much more on.
I love how we always do so much more. A wonderful chaos. You know, I'm always so happy that we don't publish like these shows and like overly promote them. Like, hey, you got to be on for today's show. We're going to be on with Lindsay Blount, going to discuss 23andMe and da-da-da-da-da. And then all of a sudden, hey, this show is nothing to do with what we just promoted, you know?
It was a good show, though.
It was a great show that didn't happen.
We'll carry it another time. I need to check I'm going to do a DNA test and see how many kids my father left around the world.
Yeah. I don't think you can you talk about that comfortably or not?
I think I can. I mean, the only thing I have to go on to is I have 3 half brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
One half brother, and he's, how old is he now? 11 years old.
Okay.
So he's half Filipino, the half African.
Okay.
Are the 3, and then apparently my father has more kids. I've heard from my godfather recently. So it's
so you've got at least 5. Your daddy was a Rolling Stone. Wherever he left his hat was his home. And then there was that line where all he did was leave us alone or something like that. Yes,
Yeah.
flying the family stone. So yeah, I'd love to do a show on your family, like have all the brothers and sisters come on the show and compare notes.
They're not going to do that.
Oh, I know. I've learned about at least from the Cypriot side, there's a lot of this island mentality. I learned a lot when we discussed the island mentality, by the way, because I didn't really, I mean, I've been in it before, but when you described it, I think we discussed it on one of those shows.
Yeah.
Like it dawned on me in Japan, there was a similar mentality. Everyone is in everyone else's business. And I know it isn't just on islands, but I just have had that as well on islands. So, yeah. So for those that are now joining us, Bambos and I will be tackling a wholly different discussion.
Nothing to do with DNA test?
Nothing to do with DNA test. We're going to discuss criticism. I thought we'd do this show with a guest that we just bring on and have as a fun third party.
Yeah.
But just because our guest didn't show up, I thought we'd just twist it around. So we're going to discuss this.
So for anyone that has any questions, the way to deal with someone criticizing you is just say fuck you and your judgments.
Yeah, exactly. And then you won't have any friends, and then no one will criticize you anymore. That's a great result, Bambos. You know,
you get criticized a lot, right?
I do. I get criticized for how I treat you on the show a lot. Like
slow. Like,
yeah.
Don't involve me in this journey.
It's true, though. I had my adopted dad in Vienna say, Andy, we got to discuss how you treat Bambos on the show. And he was really serious.
Guys, I'd like to have some comments.
Yeah.
Like, if there's more people that feel that Andy's an abusive little fuck.
Yes.
Comment below.
Yeah, exactly. Let us know. Give us your feedback.
And be specific.
Yeah, be specific, please.
Don't just be vague.
Yeah. The thing that I would love to do with the criticism is that I'm often looking at things. I use a tool that's called the Harrison assessment. And the Harrison assessment is basically working off of paradox theory. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the paradox being 2 things that appear to be contradictory, but they're in actuality complementary.
It's a really amazing assessment, by the way. Like Andy used to do these I don't know if you still do them.
Yeah, I did them yesterday. I do them all the time.
Nice.
So what Dan Harrison is the man's name. I thought I'd bring him on, but he's always feeling so so proper. I'm scared to bring them on and use the, like my normal language with them. But so the thing is about the Harrison, which I love, and I've discussed using an X and a Y axis. Yeah, horizontal is the X and vertical is the Y. But and he uses this XY axis and he lays and plots out on the X axis. He uses the term open and reflective, right?
Yeah.
This is for self-identity. So it would be the x-axis is open and reflective, and the y-axis is certain. So if you think about it, to what degree is someone open against how certain they are? And what I've found is if I look at that graph and I see someone, and people are usually mapped very, very near to their real behavior, you can predict how one is going to behave when someone says, hey, I don't think you did that well. And of course, if somebody, right, if we take the x-axis, so we do the open and reflective, if someone has a really high score at open and reflective, and they have a very low score in their certainty, then they're going to be, what would the term be? What's the word I'm looking for? They're going to be punishing themselves. They're going to be thinking that like they're not good enough because they're not certain. They'll be uncertain, unconclusive.
Unconclusive.
Yeah. If somebody has a high certainty, right, and a low open, then you can certainly expect for them to be defensive because they're certain and they're not open to anything.
Yeah.
So what I've seen in my life is that if I'm mapping and seeing myself on that map, the sweet spot is when you're open and certain. I know what I know, and I'm totally open to seeing it some differently. Yeah. And that's a hard balance because a lot of people, in my experience, they have a hard time either being certain because they think you can't be certain about anything. So they live in a little bit of a gray zone, or they're so open, or they're so certain and not open and reflective that they get really easily defensive.
It's very difficult to have a conversation.
Yeah. And if you look at, if we're mapping, for instance, a lot of what we see in the U.S. right now, what we're seeing in the U.S. often when it gets to this identity politics is people very certain, so a high certainty score, in a low open and reflective score.
Yeah.
So they're not really. So if I say to you, hey, there's something in your logic that's off, then no one says, really? What do you see? Immediately it jumps to no, you just say that because you're liberal, like that, or you just say that because you're conservative.
Can we not go into politics?
Well, I do that because it's easiest to think to the thing. But what other example would you like to use? Because I would love to use anything that it could be a relationship. What would be an example you'd like to use?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just saw, as you were speaking now about the politics, I'm drifting away.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because you don't like politics, or what's the?
We've spoken about the American politics so much on the show. We always use it as a reference that I want to bring it closer to home at least.
Okay.
And I know we have viewers in the US, but we do live in the
No, I don't. Well, I mean, since the media it clarifies that as the brightest example. I'll take the easiest example usually. So that's usually the easiest example I have. And unless you have a better one, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so we stay with American politics then.
No, when it comes to this paradox, no.
Yeah.
Nothing comes up. Nothing jumps out of
it. But it goes a little bit, to take it a little bit step further beyond just that. It would be, we're talking about identity. So in that moment when one is shaped an identity about themselves, and then that identity is confronted, that's often experienced as criticism, and that's when we'll see a defensive reaction. So the stronger the identity, the more likely that you'll see that people react reactively to some sort of feedback. Yeah.
So you are getting quite a lot criticized about how you are perceived to be treating Bambos on the show.
Yeah.
So how is that for you?
I could care less. What I see is this: is I always want to check in with you,
And you do.
because what one says is for me their incapacity. So I hear not the feedback, I hear where are they unable to see themselves and what assumptions are they making about our relationship.
Yeah.
Now, that's one thing. So that's where I'm certain. So that we go back to the certain, we go back to that the XY axis I was speaking about. But where am
Nice.
I open and reflective? I say, listen, it's feedback. All feedback is important. So then I go back to you and I ask you how you're experiencing it.
And it's really weird because we've been interacting for many years.
Yeah.
I often also have the question: to what degree do we see ourselves in how we are actually behaving? But in all honesty, I am sensitive,
Yeah.
and if I felt like if I felt you were diminishing me in any way, yeah, I can't say, Andy, because also in our relationship, in a way, I've also invited you to diminish me at points in my life, because if I would be getting triggered, then it's something for me to work on, right?
Well, we would say diminish you. And when you say diminish
It's
you,
it's in quotes.
no, I don't even want to use the word because that'll confuse the people that are there.
Oh, go on.
I would, because now we make it personal. There is behavior. The behavior has consequences. If you're not aware of the consequences, then actually you don't have an opportunity to change the behavior. So if you say, I would help support you when when there's behavior that isn't serving you or that you're not aware of.
Yeah.
And then somebody watching will say, well, he's diminishing him because they feel like, well, hey, the way I'm engaged, they might not like my style, who knows, but the way that I'm engaging it, they don't understand that actually it's supporting you to see that there's something else, that there's a better way or whatever. And the same would be true vice versa. Right?
Yeah.
So, and in some ways, it's things evolve. I mean, when we talked earlier, there was time when we were doing the show when we would often mention that you would freeze.
Yeah.
And we'd use the term freeze.
Or you would use the term straight face.
Or straight face, yeah. And then I think as I began to grow and allow myself again to stay open and then hear what other people were doing and then sensing what was going on as far as I could with you, I said, oh, I'm only now seeing that this is a trauma response, or at least now I can see how it would be a trauma response. And then you see, we evolved our relationship there.
Yeah, definitely.
So that would be a moment where I would say, see, and this is the funny word, because we say criticism has a negative connotation to it. And I'd like to see, because what's the difference between criticism and feedback? It's just an interpretation in the end. Or you could say criticism is done in order to lessen one's or to what do you say, purposely done for a negative outcome. What do you? Ronnie is
it's
walking
your wife.
around. So I can say one thing to you, and you could experience it as feedback, or you could experience it as a criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also depends on how the person offers it, right? In a way that, hey, I want to check in with you. I have something to share. It's been on the back of my mind. Do you feel openness? And the other person might say, I'm not sure what I'll be saying yes to. Give me some context.
Yeah. Okay. But you're getting into this. For me, that's another step of this talk. That's a big one.
It is a big one.
And it could be the whole. So we're talking about the technique or the approach to how one would give feedback in a way that it would be most likely that the other person wouldn't resist it.
But then it wouldn't be criticism, right?
Well, let's, I would say we don't get to decide how the other person experiences it.
Yeah.
What we get to do is we get to make it as, and this is a word that I'll use and we're going to talk about on our next show, as impersonal as we can, so that it's less likely that they need to say, hey, you're attacking me. And that's always how I want to operate in life, if I can. Yeah.
Last night, we had a shoot yesterday with my two wonderful colleagues.
Yeah.
And towards the end of the evening, I was about to sit down in my Zen mode last night. And I got a message from one of my colleagues, and she said, hey, I just want to let you know there were a couple. I really enjoyed our session. There was something that happened during the shoot. I didn't like this, and this.
Okay.
But it was a bit loaded.
Okay.
And there was a lot of judgment. And I realized it's end of the day, she's tired and she doesn't want to sleep with that, but she's kind of
Offloading it. Yeah.
In a message and not really having a conversation with me. So I'm like, I love you. And I can't deny there's a lot of judgment in this message. And I'd really love to hear you. And at the same time, I'm going to bed now, but just to give something back to you, send it again, make it about yourself. And then I'm really open to talk about this. Or ask me a curiosity question and discover what was behind my actions. And again, I told her I love you, and I'm also happy that you bring it forward. Thank you for your trust.
Oh, wow.
And we decided we're going to meet and talk about it tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah. Why do you say well?
Oh, I'm processing because, I mean, when you do something, I also know that we've had a lot of interactions through the years around these topics. So I can't help but think, oh, you pulled out some things from our handbook, right?
This is like Andy speaking from me.
Ronnie, you know what Ronnie told me this morning? Like, she was listening to something and she says, Bambos is really starting to sound like you.
Fuck.
And she said something that I always say that she said she started hearing you say.
What's that?
Is she in there? Ronnie, you there? What's the thing that I always say that you hear Bambos saying now?
Oh, you always say, you know me.
You know me. So I always say, you know me. How? So she said she started to hear you saying that.
You know me.
I do.
Yeah.
You start saying it, Bambos. You know me.
No, I thought it was something else. You know me. It doesn't really.
Well, I don't know. I heard her play it back for me. So now whenever I say that, I'm going to think of me, and then I'm going to think of you.
Oh, shit.
You know me, Bambos. I'm always doing that. You know me. Whatever it is I'm saying.
So there haven't been any. There haven't been any comments.
Did she respond to that though? She
did.
And what did she say?
She saw what I was saying, that there was judgment.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, she said she's gonna process it.
Wow.
And she also, this morning we were gonna call a little bit, and she said we're very aligned in it's better to sit down in person and talk about these things than I don't want to hold this on and just throw it in a message.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to call it the reflection I gave back to her is also when I feel loaded, I'll write it down in my journal and I'll sit with it for 2 or 3 days sometimes, because I know the first moment when something comes up for me, it's reactive.
Yeah.
And I need a few days. And in a few days, I still want to talk about it. It won't be loaded and it won't be reactive. It will be more reflective and constructive.
Yeah.
And I call it the 72-hour rule.
Do you have a 72-hour rule?
I've implemented it. It's like whenever I need to make a serious decision, like changing tickets or whatever, give me 3 days and I'll get back to you. And it's not that I don't have the answer, but the answer sometimes is a bit bled with reactivity.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see. Yeah, I what I've noticed, I think as you speak, I'm reflecting how I see myself deal with those same situations. And I've seen myself, I respond quicker in those moments nowadays with more lightness because how I don't know what it is in it, but what I started to see was the longer I wait with something and then come back with it, then it kind of drags this it becomes something. So I found that if someone says, I'm angry about whatever they're angry about. I say, oh, first of all, it sucks that you have to feel that. And then,
No, it's more for myself.
mm,
If it's the other person, I'm not going to let them cook for 3 days.
no, but in this case, did the person accuse you of something? Of behaving a certain way that they didn't like? Or what was the...
Oh yeah. And we said we would talk, but because we already set an intention.
Yeah. I would have done the same, by the way.
Yeah.
I would have said, it sucks that you feel that way. Let's talk about it next time we're together. Like, I wouldn't have even said any, like, I would have left it like kind of that simple for the same reasons you did. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, because I agree with you. Like, as soon as someone is in a spin in their head telling a story and revalidating it, like, anything you do at that moment is looked at in light of that spin, and you can't interact with them. So the more you write, it's the more that they can take out of context and use against you.
Yeah. But also a message, a text, always is someone's going to project something onto it.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah, I was telling someone I worked with once, I said, hey, the less you give context for what you're writing, they're always going to interpret, and it's never going to be in your favor. And he looked at me and he said, like, years later, he quoted that back to me. I now know, Andy, they're never going to look in my favor.
I think that's also in your Wounded Healer.
Oh, is it?
With the woman that left the session.
Oh, yeah. They're always going to interpret it. It'll never be in your favor.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So so I'd also like to go into like that skill of giving the feedback, which may be experienced as criticism. We're gonna say that there's something that we're seeing that we believe isn't benefiting the other person, but we're making an assumption there. And I think one of the greatest flaws of an individual is to think that they know better for that individual than they know for themselves. So I really check myself at the door, and very infrequently will I tell a person, this is what you should do. I'd say, this is the behavior, this is what I'm noticing, and this is what I've experienced myself in the past. So what you do is your decision. But do keep in mind that I at least see this liability or risk or possibility.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is that in that way, it's not really criticism as much as a reflection on what my experiences showed me, without it needing to be even subtly or indirectly a jibe. And I think in criticism, it's like, or let's just say feedback, again, I don't want to distinguish those too much, but when I'm sharing something with another, then I always want them to see what makes it important for me to share it, so that they don't think that it's coming out of nowhere and then they have to interpret it.
Gotcha.
And yeah, that's been it's very subtle, though. I'm trying to think if I had to give rules, the typical, what are the 3 things you watch out for with giving feedback?
3 points.
Yeah. I mean, the first point, if there was going to be a point, would be that you have to distinguish to what degree is this something you want, or is it what that other person may want? And I think the way that people do that today is what you'll see, as we joked about it earlier, is we say, are you open for feedback?
Yeah.
And then the other person, it's almost hard for them to say no to that. So in a weird way, it's not really comfortable from the start, because if you're open for feedback, all of a sudden it's almost like if you say no, you're a jerk. So and I'm always, when I'm seeing things, I'll always want to give a little bit more context. Like, I saw some things on the show that I'd love to share, but I don't know where you are, if you're even looking for any kind of support or anything. But I had some ideas if it works for you, and I know I'm making a lot of assumptions. So I don't even know if it's so I want to diminish what I'm going to say to them, because there's so many assumptions I'm going to be making that I don't want them to feel like I'm also thinking I know what's better for them. I almost want to diminish it as much as I can. Yeah. And always, as you know, we always talk about context. The way to give feedback in one context may be totally different than another one, and it may or may not be appropriate. Like sometimes they'll often do these, these sort of personality type tests or Myers-Briggs or whatever these things are, where you see some people like to be told things directly and some people don't. So if we assume I'm direct, everyone should accept the way I share my feedback, then all of a sudden we're blind to the fact that we're the one that's triggering them, where if we interacted with them differently, then they would be more open and receptive to what we had to say.
Yeah. It's a little bit, there is a practice in the authentic relating, right?
Okay.
We did it together. It's like the Aikido.
Yeah.
And you can use that to even diffuse someone's anger, but also if someone comes to you with feedback, how to really listen.
Well, let's do it. So let's try it. What would be a good example so we can actually do it right now?
So you can be someone that's upset. I know you're really good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to give me feedback.
Okay. Bambos, I spent a good 2 hours with you.
Give me a second. Oh, this is hilarious.
Okay.
Once Andy did this in a workshop that we were giving together, and it was so funny because everyone in the room I believed it. You didn't make it easy, but
you told me not to, so I did what you asked me to.
Good.
We spent 2 hours, and I must say, I'm looking at the photos I got, and I don't find any of them good. In fact, I can't use any of these for my website. None of them are representative of anything that I want to be showing to the world.
Is there anything else?
No. I mean, I don't know. I don't have any clue like why I could pay you, but I'm going to pay you for something I'm not going to use.
Oh, then there's no payment, and then you don't have to use the photos also. And we could also look at what didn't go well.
I don't want to look at what didn't go well. I mean, I gave you 2 hours. Look at what you gave me.
Okay, so what would be a solution that you would feel comfortable with?
I mean, I certainly want my money back.
Oh, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
It's already done.
Then I'll take my money, and then we just won't work together again. That was it.
You took it to an example, which
by the way, let's go for it. We'll go through this one, and then we'll play it out.
Okay.
And then we can reevaluate. So I was the most unreasonable person in the world right now, and you actually, for me, because I was one of those people, and those people, I know them. They don't want to find any middle ground.
Yeah.
So in essence, they're just critical, and they only want to be validated. In fact, the only way that you would get that guy off your case is if you said to him, "Listen, I'm a horrible photographer. I've never shot a good photo in my life. I'm sorry I wasted your time. I should stop doing this for work." That's what they want to hear.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. And if you said that, then they would leave. And sometimes I might even say that to someone, for whatever reason, if I was in my own work.
Okay.
But okay, so now go back to what you're going to say. You said that was too far, and what?
Oh, criticism, feedback. Well, it was an okay example. I felt, how do we make sure that you feel listened? Because now you went to the extreme that there's no space for even a conversation, and the relationship is gone.
Yeah.
But how do we the examples where there is still possibility for relationship and for exploring?
Well, I would even go back to that guy, because the guy that you were just speaking with.
Yeah.
Because the more unreasonable they are, the more they want to be heard, the more they feel unseen.
Yeah.
So what I would tend to do is I would actually amplify the fact they're not being seen. I hear that this is really, even if I give you the money, I hear there's still a lot of things there that are still that you're struggling with in regards to me. So I know I can't do anything with the photography, but I just want to acknowledge that I see that, and I'm sorry for whatever that might have caused.
Yeah, you completely wasted my time.
Yeah, I understand that, and I listen. I do this work, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So I'm really all I can say is I'm sorry.
So how do I get compensated for my time?
I mean, I can't pay. I
didn't meet my deadline.
Yeah, well, I can't. I mean, I can do everything I can in terms of giving you another photo shoot and taking care of that. But What I can't do is I can't pay every person who's not happy with my service the money that they would otherwise earn. That would be not a business. Yeah. But yeah. Sorry that went this way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. But that guy is that guy, right? There's
Yeah.
nothing you're going to get from them
No.
in terms of relationship.
And you also, like the way this was going, it's also a relationship that you want to leave it on good terms, as to the best of your ability.
Yeah, because they'll go back and write everything.
And not want to work with them.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah, because they'll go on, everything to negatively write your reviews and all that kind of stuff. The one thing that I'm wondering that when, because you and I, it's hard for you and I to do this because we do it naturally now. We saw a guest the other day. I remember we were with Thomas Haida. And if you saw Thomas Haida, like he was very much similar to how you and I would accept feedback. I don't know if you remember how we were doing it. We would play with Thomas, very intellectual. He's written 8 books. He has a very strong knowledge. And then some point on the show, remember when I said, Thomas, that's nonsense. Remember that on the show? And then Thomas laughed and said, yeah, I know, but what's your point? Like that's the non-identified space of looking for open feedback. Right?
That podcast was insane.
Yeah?
It is. Yeah.
Insane in what way?
It's a mind twist.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's
completely.
I don't know if you read his bio afterwards, but he actually writes in his in one of his posts, he says, I purposefully write in a way that forces the reader to challenge their way of thinking. So he says, I could write it more commercially or more accessibly, but by doing so, I'm diminishing the point I'm trying to make. So he actually is sticking to his way of communicating because he understands that it's through those words that people can have the awareness that he's looking to share, which I thought was really quite sweet. But getting back to the criticism thing, I would say the first point is vulnerability. So if one isn't vulnerable when they're actually sharing what they're observing with another, I didn't want to use the word feedback or criticism. I'd say what they're observing, because if you share what you're observing, then it's not like you're holding it as a belief.
Yeah. It's normally the observation intertwined with a judgment or a projection.
Yeah, and I think most people that do it are unaware that they're doing it. Yeah. And that's when when I think they're meddling in other people's lives, but they're not taking any responsibility for their own call it their own belief system or their own interpretation of events. Yeah. It's actually quite irresponsible if you look at it. If I tell you what I think you're doing and I project onto you and then undermine your confidence, undermine your thinking processes because I'm insecure by something you're doing, then what I'm actually doing is I'm not taking any responsibility for my feelings.
And you're not showing yourself.
Not showing myself. And then I'm using that as a means of pushing you down and making you smaller.
Yeah, so you feel uncomfortable and you're projecting that I'm the cause of the discomfort. Yes. So in a way, make me smaller so you don't feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. And that's what I think that's the, call it this, if we look at it as a loop, that's the loop that's happening often in relationships and people is that one person makes another feel uncomfortable. The person that's feeling uncomfortable is not aware that it's their issue. And then they're blaming the other person for it.
I read something this morning. I made what was it? I made a screenshot of it. It says, my wife and I got into the habit of asking each other, do you want comfort or solutions? When the other was having a bad day. This one sentence can save us from an argument 9 out of 10 times.
That is
I love it.
Good.
Comfort or solution?
Oh, that is so good.
Yeah.
Do you want comfort or solutions?
I saved that one because it normally, especially when you're in a relationship, it's so easy to want to give your lover a solution. Like at least that's the go-to for most men.
Yeah.
We want to solve the feminine. And most of the time they just want love.
Mm.
It is
said, By the way, look at the upgrade on Edith's profile photo.
It's not me.
We're all into it, Edith. Looking very good. I love the upgrade. So just
I was going to message you, Edith, because you've been with us for a while now on the shows. And I got to know a part of you that I wasn't aware of, and I feel much closer to you. So thank you for the way you've been showing up.
Yeah, it's always great. It's always fantastic.
So she says, yeah, how do you react to these people from your last example?
And so let's take the last example.
Which was the last example? The people that project.
Yeah, the people that project. Oh, so the people that project, so if you read The Wounded Healer, it can be very drastic or it can be subtle. The most drastic is deal with your own shit and then we can talk. But please take responsibility for your feelings. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be the most drastic. So Bambos gave that example earlier. I also, in the Wounded Healer book, because I was feeling so weak and so exhausted, when someone asked me if I was open to feedback, I could already tell they were judging me. And I said no. It was the first time in my life that I said no.
No, you said fuck you and your judgment.
Yeah, I said fuck you and your judgment. True.
Such a beautiful, like, I have to say that was one of my favorite chapters.
And it was one of the chapters I was most insecure to put in the book because, you know, as you know, I'm not trying to portray I'm sharing it as it was and how it was for me.
Chapter 13.
Chapter 13.
Page 65.
Oh no, we're not reading it.
No, we're not reading it. It's like 3 pages.
But that wouldn't be the appropriate way in general, because you also know, after I said that, I also was totally vulnerable. I cried and I shared with that person how hard it is to be open to someone who's judging you and at the same time not taking responsibility. So I let them see that
and don't look at you with love and compassion.
Yeah. And so that was just to close that loop, because I don't want it to be left there, because then it doesn't portray the actuality of that event. Yeah.
I'm also always questioning in my own self, is this a person I want to stay in connection with?
Yeah, okay, but don't go there too quick,
and it doesn't mean I'm going to leave it in a bad way.
No, I got it. But that's a great question. But let's assume for the moment, because Edith asks here, so when one does it, right? I wanted to at least try to answer that question for how is one way or several ways of reacting. And that was one way, but I'd like to venture on the other way. So someone is projecting onto you, and that projection has judgment, and they're presenting it as criticism. And then, so the only thing that I've known or continue to practice in my own life is that if someone projects onto me, I'm not going to fight that projection, because if I fight it and defend it, it'll only make them firmer in their belief.
Yeah.
So I don't fight a projection. I'd say, yes, I see that you feel that way. I can imagine why you'd feel that way. I'm sorry you feel that way, whatever it is. And I don't even say it condescending. It's really, if that's the way they feel, that's the way they feel.
You take their perspective seriously.
And then from there, I would navigate. I would at least say things like, it depends on what they've accused me of or what they're projecting onto me. But then I would even ask, well, listen, what I would sometimes do is if it's a really strong projection with a lot of beliefs, then I'll say, listen, I'm sorry you feel it. And I'll mention or suggest, say, I know, or I hear that there's so many beliefs that as far as I see it, there's no reason to discuss this, because I don't hear you're open to anything. So I'll basically hold them accountable to the fact that they're not in any way reflecting on their own judgment.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're like, yeah. And then I'm like happy to move away. And then they'll say, well, I am. I say, well, then I'll really want them open. So I'll say, are you really open, or are you just saying that? Like, because I don't want to have the discussion if I don't feel for a moment that we really have a chance to maybe look at this whole thing differently. And maybe I'll spend 5 minutes before I'd even say a word, because creating that openness, I don't take it for granted. Just because someone says they're open doesn't actually mean they're open.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll really ask to the point where they have to become aware that there are assumptions that they've made in the statements that they've come to me with, for instance.
Nice.
And from there, that's when so it's like, first, trust. There has to be trust. No trust, no reason to proceed. When trusts exist, then I would then sometimes ask a question. So I know you seem to think that I did this, and that was intended to create a relationship with you, but actually I just liked you, and I didn't realize that was going to be the consequence. Yeah, but you should have known. When you go out with a girl and you look her in the eyes and you stare her, that's an automatic assumption someone makes. Yes, I can see why you would say that, but for me, I can also see that I actually do love connection with people, and although it may have felt that way, it wasn't necessarily my intention. So I'm sorry, because I do see that was the consequence, and it wasn't really what I intended. Yeah, but that's the reaffirming. You have to know. So that's where the other person's identity is stuck in a perception of right and wrong.
Yeah.
And you never win that argument, right?
Yeah. Beliefs.
It's belief system, of course. So, and then I will at least start pointing that out softly, whatever it is. I would point that out as directly as I can without making it an assault on their belief system. Yeah. Edith, I hope that helps you understand how we navigate it.
Yeah, I like the way of reacting. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Nice.
So that was that.
Okay. Thanks for today's show, guys.
Yeah.
We're going to do so much more on Monday.
Yeah.
So where else can we take this?
I mean, have 100 things. I mean, the whole thing of criticism to begin with is basically a meditation for me.
There's also the other part. Like, sometimes people might be reacting to something that they are experiencing with you. And even though their words, I'm talking about my past self, my words might not have been always concrete. There was definitely something that I was experiencing that I couldn't put words to. And back then, I would create a lot of confusion around myself. And in our time together, I managed to put words to and go back and talk about things that I might have left a bit open. So sometimes the criticism is actually something there for us to look at.
Okay, so how did you get there? Because I said criticism is a meditation, or so. Where did you make the connection?
I'm also giving it on the other way. Like, sometimes someone might criticize us, right? And it might be hard for us. So I'm talking about the receiver now.
Okay.
So the question that you might have is, oh, what are they seeing in me right now that I'm not seeing? And try to learn from it, even though it might be difficult in that moment to receive it, just because they're coming at us a little bit charged.
Yeah. But so that would be something that we would both do all the time.
Yeah.
But what's your point then?
Oh, the point is, we've talked about how to deal with someone that's criticizing, but also how to receive it. We haven't really talked about that.
Nice.
Like, not to completely exclude it.
Yeah.
Because in the end, everyone has a perspective to something that we might not be seeing. And it goes again to that graph of being...
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I thought we addressed it on the beginning of the show.
Well, now we're giving examples.
Good. So the x-axis would be how open and reflective am I? And then the y-axis would be how certain am I?
Yeah.
And so if we say, in this case...
As the receiver,
yeah. So as the receiver, I would say, I got the call yesterday.
From who?
From I don't want names, because then that wouldn't be fair to the person who.
Oh, call from who? From what?
From someone who was calling me in regards to how we were interacting.
Yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday, day before yesterday, or something.
Andy, you're like a Nazi.
Yeah, exactly. That was the Nazi call, and so I know that person. Has, they've never done a personal development course in their lives. They're hitting 70.
And if you're watching, don't get offended.
Their desire is not to look at how we're evolving together It's to look at an interaction and be separate from it. And there's a lot of ability to criticize from that space, right?
Yeah.
Mentor-mentee relationship, that all that ideas, there's nothing of value in that. It's just two people, and one isn't getting whatever they think they should get. So that was what came to me from the individual. So for me, on one level, you're right. So I was open because he shared it with me. I said, "Oh, interesting. You see that?" I didn't really react to it. Actually, I just thought, "Oh, interesting. You saw that." And my first thought was, as you said, "What is it I'm not seeing?"
Yeah.
It was the first question. What is it I'm not seeing? It wasn't, this guy is this or he's that. I don't really care. I mean, anyone can say anything. I'm just open to and interested. What is he seeing that I might not be seeing? So that was the first thing that I do have my own consciousness of ways that we've behaved throughout our show, which I would say were not fully giving you the space.
Yeah.
And I knew it. and I did it purposefully.
It wasn't blind.
No. I mean, it was very much like, it was either you're going to have your trauma state, which I wasn't able to deal with at that moment, and sit next to me, and then not hold space for me. But now I have to sort of, oh shit, how do I manage you while I'm trying to have this talk? That was a very uncomfortable state for me to be in. So in a way, I was navigating that for quite a few shows.
Quite a few. I mean, we're talking about the first or the mid 6 months.
Yeah.
March,
exactly.
April, May, June, July.
Yeah, I mean, I get the guests calling me up afterwards and saying, "What's going on with Bambos?" I wasn't comfortable. I could hear his judgment. So when a guest calls me after a show and tells me that, that's uncomfortable for me, because I don't want them to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that was sort of what was going on in the background. Now, that doesn't mean that I am dealing with it as well as I could, because even in you see how I react, I'll evolve in how I'm interacting with you the more I learn and discover. So when I saw your stone-faced, or whatever we're going to call that state that I was experiencing you in, I also come from the empathy point. I felt the shutdown, in you. So now I'm sitting there like, oh, I don't know how to navigate this, because I didn't have the tools, right, to do that. And as somebody gave me a pointer a few weeks back,
Jeff Lieberman.
Yeah, that helped me then say, oh wow, now I know another thing which would support us and how we're interacting, which means that we now have another opportunity to evolve this.
Yeah,
because it's never constant. It's always, in a way, it's evolving as we go.
And it's funny, since that discovery, I don't know, naming it really helped me drop into me, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. It helped me because imagine the difference in my state of mind. Because remember, I'm holding an idea in my head. Oh, Bambos is shut down now. That's one idea. Oh, Bambos is in a trauma state at the moment. So that was how I redefined how it was, which made it much easier for me to just hold space for your trauma.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I felt a bit emotional there when you were talking about it. When we came back from our hiatus, there was a moment where I saw I couldn't get out of that label that you put on me.
Which label was that?
Oh, the shutdown.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a kind of helplessness there in me, because I also couldn't really express it to you that, hey, this is not it anymore. But if I was sitting there with a straight face, sometimes I'd be waiting for you to put that label on me, and then because I was waiting for it, I would be creating it.
Yeah.
So as soon as we had that conversation that it's trauma, I felt relieved.
Yeah.
Because I felt, oh, in the trauma, I'm not being judged anymore.
Yeah.
And it gave the space for, I don't know, when was our show with the guy again? What's his name?
With Haida or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Thomas. Yeah.
Yeah, that just gave
Mm.
when we came on the show. That would have been a typical show where I would be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would even say before that time, I wasn't judging you. You experienced it as a judgment, but it wasn't judgment. It was a state.
Hmm.
That was that's the thing that I'm.
Yeah, I did experience, and I'll tell you what I was observing
Okay, right.
during the show. You were I don't know, I can't say provoking, but you kept on talking about Bambos is in a straight face. So if you keep saying that, uh, what do you think the impact would have on an individual?
Okay, so if the individual watching is empathetic, which sometimes they will be,
Yeah.
and they see you in that state, and we don't acknowledge it with them, then that was when they were saying I'm being judged by Bambos, or they call me afterwards. So what I'm doing,
Oh,
or
so they would make it about themselves.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like going back to what I said, they're never if you leave space for them to interpret, they're if you don't
They're
show,
not going to interpret in your
they're
favor.
not going to interpret in your favor. So I am saying things to make the guest feel more at peace.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I'm sorry, because I also see that had consequences for you that I wasn't aware of.
This is how we would also talk about it behind the scenes, guys.
Yeah.
Where's
Yeah.
Bulalang today?
Yeah. So yeah, that was very much what was on my mind when I told you when you would when you were experiencing the trauma, then I would often see or experience the person, and then kind of I could tell sometimes it was my interpretation, right? But the strong empathy would make me feel like they are not feeling as comfortable, not knowing what's going on inside of you. So then I would try to alleviate that tension however I could in a way to kind of, I'm going to ask you a question I think Bambos would ask you. Like I would pull in what I know from your energy, and then channel it in a way, so to kind of bring you in whichever way I could. But it was never elegant, and afterwards we would discuss as well, how do we support you to be more fully embodied, right? And then I remember what we decided on was that wherever you are, you get to state it outright, and you don't have to defend yourself. I mean, the one time when I was a little bit like, I was like I was like, I'm glad you do it, and I had to take a deep swallow. Was after one of the shows you just said the guest was still in the waiting room. I was just bored. I'm just bored, Andy. Like I was like, and that guest also called her to apologize to me for how and then I had, he's just,
If you're watching the show, this is like old shows.
No, these are old shows. This is when we were going. The context is you've got no money on your bank account, right? You're showing up here with people from all over the world that are very intellectual and in general not necessarily sensual living, not living from an embodied state, and that's in our experience, right? Is that you're very sensual, you're feeling into the person, and sometimes that person is so disconnected, they're from the head up, totally intellectual, and no words coming from their body, that you're like, who are you and how do I make sense of you? Like I hear words, but I don't see you, I don't feel you, I don't know what your essence is. Like,
and when Andy speaks, it took me a while to also embrace that is also a way of being, that there's nothing wrong with it. So if you're an intellectual and you want to come on the show, don't worry, you won't be hacked.
Chris Garrell that show was really beautiful. Emotional Intelligence, where he actually showed or shared how in admiration he was of that quality that you had, and how he was suffering from not being more like that. That was really a beautiful moment. Yeah. So from the receiver we'll go back to the receiver of the feedback or the criticism. what I'm always doing when I'm receiving any kind of feedback or criticism is that I'm always listening to it and still being certain. So I'm certain and I'm open and reflective. So if a person is criticizing me, but they're not someone that has any clue of what I'm really trying to do in my life, or they're not clear on what our relationship is,
They're
or
not asking questions.
they're not asking questions. So I'm going to listen to them, knowing that that's their background, but not dismissing that they also might have a point.
Mm.
And that's so, you laughed because when I called you after I got the feedback that I was a Nazi to you, then you were like, Andy, why are you calling me about this? Remember, you were like, almost, are you insecure? Like, it was almost like, well, you were like, really, like, almost like, Andy, this is not, I don't know what your thoughts were, but it was almost like I heard in your voice, like, Andy, are you calling me because you're insecure? And I'm like, no, because this is an opportunity for us to reflect. If someone feels like there's something going on, why wouldn't we take the opportunity to ask? And that's where I feel the balance exists.
You can always go to the show where we talk about our relationship.
We did one show just for our relationship.
Because up until that point, we had so much critics that were a wonderful chaos. I mean, how many viewers do we get?
What do you mean? On any given day, we'll download between 40. So at 40 on the podcast, right? Because we're doing the simulcast. And here, because it's live, some people got a live. It's hit or miss how many people show up.
Where's Bulalang?
And Bolalang, I'm angry at you, Bolalang. If you're not going to show up,
where's your high school teacher?
Bolalang, if you're not going to show up, then at least you need to send us a message ahead of time.
Talking about Bitcoin. Where's your high school teacher?
My high school teacher?
It's normally Bulalang and what's his name?
Oh, JC Barnett.
JC.
Yeah, JC Barnett and Bolalang.
The hatter.
Yes, he sends us our hats. I'm sorry that we're not wearing any of your hats today, but we keep them here. Here's our hat collection from our from JC.
This reminds me of TV shows. Like sometimes guests would always send gifts in.
Yeah.
We want more gifts.
Exactly, our hat. Or we can't ask, because once we ask, we're gonna get hats from around the world now. But yeah, why not? I would love to have hats from around the world. We don't, the one thing I do know.
Small, extra large. Big head, medium. Hey, Monday, actually already this weekend, Andy is embarking on a walking journey, Forrest Gump style.
Yep. Just walk and they will come. I will be walking the coast of the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And here you can look at it. We'll show you there. I will be starting.
This is going to be fun.
I'll be starting down here, up here, which is called the Hoek van Holland, right down here. And basically, I'll be traveling up 7 segments. Now, you'll notice that there's only 6. I had to add one because this segment here was 37 kilometers, and there's a water crossing. There's a ferry that I need to find. So basically, I decided to cut that in 2, and I put that right here. So this whole coastline, we're really looking, this is all sand. This is one straight shot of sand, and as far as I know, it's all walkable. And one of the things I did, one of the things I did was I looked at where I can find supermarkets, because I also need to buy food, right? So some of these places, like this location here, the supermarket might be there. So even that's a long walk if I want to get food.
I'm visiting you on that day. I'm gonna do one of the walk. I'm gonna do the Monday walk, and then we're gonna do the show together.
Yeah, and then I'll be doing the show remote for the rest of the days. But it ends up in Den Helder up here, and then we'll take the bus or the train back to Amsterdam. And it's about I looked at the initial trip down. It was 2.5 hours with public transit from Amsterdam to Hoek van Holland. And what I did was I just decided to get our taxi driver to come and take me there. So yes,
your special taxi
my
driver.
Special taxi driver is going to take.
We love him.
It's about an hour and 10-minute drive, and then Ronnie will join me for the first 2 days of the journey.
And then Ronnie out, Bambos in.
And then Bambos in. And then I'll have 4 days alone. And
no one's joining you?
No. No, I'll be doing that all alone. I'm looking forward to being alone,
Yeah.
right? Like I like to do a lot of things in life. I immediately started to get the media to see if I could get a magazine to cover it, and I got a magazine that's called Dutch. That's comes out of the Canada. It's actually produced in Canada, and it's got distribution around the world. It's got say 10,000 publications or whatever the Auflage, whatever the words are in the different languages, and then they are going to cover it. So I'll write that, take pictures, and it'll be a magazine article, the feature article that gets part of their.
And then all of a sudden it's on the Elephant Journal,
Yeah, well, I'll put
the
something on.
the Wounded Traveler,
The next book, you know,
The
Me
Wounded
Alone,
Walker.
The Wounded Walker.
Walk to heal. Heal
Yes.
your wounds by walking.
There'll be several things I'm sure that'll come up. Like the Wounded Healer, I'll probably do some audio voice recordings and just see if some inspiration hits me as I'm walking alone.
Nice.
I was told that it's going to be a long, boring walk because it's just a sandy coast, but I'm
With a lot of wind.
with a lot of wind, and it's supposed to be 0 degrees. So we'll see. I'll have a few layers. If it's your Bambos, you're gonna go in like a t-shirt, walking the coast. Me, like I'm gonna have 4 layers of stuff on the trip.
Are we swimming?
I'm not swimming. No way. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, if you're gonna swim, then I'll watch you from afar and take pictures.
Actually, that might not be a bad idea.
Yeah. So that's on. That starts tomorrow. I'll send out some videos from Saturday, Sunday. I also uploaded the last two podcasts. I put them online today because I won't do it on the weekend. 134 and 135. Kevin Kopchek, where he met his birth mom at 40 years old. He was adopted, and he met them, through this 23andMe thing. And then we did 2 episodes on surrender, because surrender is such a big topic for us. 135 that we have the second episode of our talk about surrendering to life and what that looks like. So that's also put on Podbeam, and
We haven't
Apple
talked about
and everything
surrendering
else.
in bed, have we?
No, that would be a good one.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
And just Andy has his walking challenge. I've given myself a meditation challenge, 100 minutes a day, and this is already day 2. But I'm already like quite baffled at the results. So I'm not gonna. I've been making videos every morning just to document it a little bit, but it's normally half an hour in the morning and then 70 minutes in the evening, and it's been quite a like my sleep is already like I'm out.
Beautiful.
So in 30 days I'll be sharing a little bit what 30 days of meditation you have to do. And then ready a book.
I love it.
That was a joke.
I love it. 30 days of meditation, Bambos. Everyone else has written a book. Why
100
not
minutes
you?
a day, Andy.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see you on Monday.
Yep.
And we're gonna do this again, over and over again,
Till the last syllable of time.
If you want to give Andy constructive feedback,
Please do.
please do.
But do it from the I make you feel this way in your stomach. Love you all, and we will see you soon. Yes? All the best. We're going to do it on A Wonderful Chaos.